biggest things that people do not factor into their bottom line or just even their acquisition in general in terms of the purchase is holding costs. That is one thing that a lot of people do not talk about. A lot of people will go and preach you that there's a good deal that's in place, whether it's like a realtor or a lender, gonna say, hey, this is a good deal, go and buy it. And I've had that experience too. When I was buying my first property out of state in Ohio, I didn't realize how many holding costs actually went into the acquisition that required how much fucking money it was gonna take to actually get it rented out, to get it rent ready, all the above. So I was like, fuck, I got completely blindsided by this. And most people do not have either the funds, the team, or the system in place to go and deal with that. Like, we didn't have the system, but we had the funds and we had the team to go and fucking dog it out. And I remember thinking to myself, why the fuck did I not factor this in? And on paper, it looked good, like it looked like a really good deal. And it was a good deal, like it is a really good deal. But it did need that holding cost. And the holding cost is one, you have to obviously front a payment sometimes. Two, you're gonna be in a position where, alongside fronting a payment, there's repair costs, then there's miscellaneous, then there's electricity bills, so many different things. And people like myself always talk about that now, but in the beginning, no one ever teaches you that shit. They'd say, hey, this is the property you make, this is how much you get out. And you can't think that way. There's no fucking benefit of ever thinking that way. It's just because you will get blindsided. It's gonna cut your bottom line. And especially if you're in a position where you're kind of like getting over leveraged, or you're just kind of putting a lot of money that you have into this deal, you think to yourself, fuck, like I'm overstretched, or I'm gonna go and waste too much money, or it's, I'm going into debt, and like there's nothing wrong with that. But that was one of the biggest things, and I know a lot of investors fail because of that, because once they start getting into bigger markets, say California, say they're going to Florida, say they're going to Texas, and they're going to these markets that are big and there's a lot more requirements needed in regards to time, money, and energy, when they're overstretching themselves and then don't factor in the holding costs, they're fucked. It's very hard. And it's something that's a little bit harder, not only in the sense of the initial time, money, energy return, but when you're actually getting the return from the profits, just because the mortgage payment's a lot higher over here in California, or if you buy in, other states that are a lot more expensive, right? Like right now, when I bought this property, when we bought these two properties over here in, how many units is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 6 units over here in California, we factored in a holding cost big, simply because we understood, okay, this property is going to be a lot more expensive. It's going to be in a position where the payment is a lot higher. The utilities would be a lot higher because it's super hot where it's at. So electricity would be higher if we need to do any work in the span of time being, from it being before it's rented out, which you didn't really need. And then alongside that, we're going to be in a position where obviously with the payment being higher, you're going to make less money on the upfront. So I had to factor that in, or we would have been legit fucked. It would have been very, very bad. The other thing that I needed to factor into consideration was my time, money, energy allocation, because the property is 2 hours away from me. I wasn't going to go over there, had to find the property management, had to factor in those fees. A lot of people don't talk about that as well. Alongside that, you're going to be in a position where you have to factor in even small fees like duplicating keys, changing locks, factoring in if you're gonna do mass showings or private showings, and then the gas and the time and energy that the property managers to give, they're gonna factor into your cost. Are they gonna do 50% of first month's rent? Do they charge an initial upfront? So many different things. And another thing that a lot of investors don't focus on is them trying to nickel and dime and try to show the property themselves. If I would have went over there for 2 hours and been in a position where I said, all right, well, you want to see the property at 12? All right, fuck it. Well, I'm going to leave my house at 10 a.m. and I'm going to go over there. And then I go over there and the person flakes. I just wasted essentially 4 hours going over there and back just to not collect. And yeah, you're in a position where maybe you have to give 50% of first month's rent to a property manager once they actually place a tenant, do the screening, all the above. However, I'm in a position where I understand that my time is more valuable making money, as opposed to that 50% of whatever the first month's rent is, because they're not going to keep 50% of the deposit. Say, for example, this property we have that's a 2-bed, 1-bath that's renting out for $1,500 a month. Yeah, I collected the $3,000, and then I had to subtract the fees. But if I would have been in a position where I had to go and show that over and over and over, go drive all the way over there, try to line everything up on the same day, and then people back out, they don't show up, all the above, I would have lost so much money on that gas, that time, and potential earning potential. A lot of investors don't factor that in. You try to do the handyman work, you try to be the nickel and dimer, it's going to make it a lot harder. And also, that's not the way that you scale. If we have property management in place in regards to the properties we buy out of state, in state, and if we did not have that, obviously out of state, it just wouldn't be feasible. In state, solves a lot of problems. They have a lot of connections, makes it a lot easier. In regards to you being the owner, obviously you still have the final say, but the hardest part of regards to the actual property acquisition that most investors don't factor in, which is the reason why most of them fail, they go bankrupt, or they fuck up, is one, the premeditation before you actually buy the property. Like I said, you're factoring in location, rent comps. Is the property already fucking vacant? Does it already have somebody in it? There's so many different approaches to that. Does it have separate gas lines if it's a multifamily unit? Does it have separate utility bills and meters? Alongside that, has it ever been rented out before? Why did the people move out? Why is the seller selling it? Where is the property located in regards to the near distance to traffic? Maybe it's right across from a high school, but it's in a very desirable neighborhood. Yeah, it's a desirable neighborhood, but it's right across from the high school. If it was down the street, it wouldn't have all the traffic right in front of his house. That's factoring into how fast someone want to move in. If it's, for example, if I was living right in front of the high school, I have all the traffic. I don't want to be in a position where I would want to move there. But if I'm fucking 2 streets down, I'm in a very nice neighborhood and I want to stay there. So little things like that people don't talk about. Alongside that, factoring in what does my rent ready cost. If the seller says that it's gonna be fucking $5,000 because you're just gonna need paint, fuck that. It's gonna be $10,000. You need to factor it in. If the seller says something that it's just a lie. But also, like, am I gonna do it myself? How long does it take? You have to factor in the premeditation before you acquire, before you get under contract. You don't want to be in a position where you go under contract and you're barely finding all this shit out. It should be a finalization of the premeditated thoughts that you already had before you even submitted an offer on the unit. It shouldn't be in a position where you're submitting offers just to find out. You should premeditate, do the due diligence, hypothesize everything, submit the offer, and protect yourself with the contingencies to be in a position where if it doesn't make sense, you back out. But it should just be honestly solidifying what the fuck that you already did. That's the way that we acquired this property. It was, all right, I understood that this property that we bought is $740,000. It had $4,500 in rental income, but it needed the last unit vacant. So we did the $4,500 get deducted from our overall cash to close. Then I was in a position where I said, okay, we could ask these people if they know anybody. Then we said, all right, well, where is this area? It's near the college. People want to move in near the college because they go to school there. Or alongside that, there may be any sort of college students that need to rent a place out. Moreover, it's not directly in front of the college, so it doesn't get the traffic of the college. However, it's in a position where it's also relatively in a decent area where people that don't go to college actually live there. So I'm in a position where I'm not just getting college students getting high turnover rate. If I had a high turnover rate, I'd have to refund deposits, and I have a vacancy. Then I have to front the difference of the mortgage payment. Most investors don't think like that. They say, how can I get someone in as fast as possible? How can I make as much money as possible? And it's not what it's about, because you only have so much time that you can't be doing miscellaneous bullshit because you try to save money. Your time is gonna always be more valuable. I would say one of the last things is that most investors say is that they're scared of debt. When you're scared of debt, you're scared of scaling fast. You have to understand that debt is not taxable. It is something that debt is not taxable, but it is scalable. You have to leverage debt properly. When I bought my first property, I had $13,000 in my bank account, and I said, fuck it, I'm gonna go and buy this with my business partner, Alex. I did not use all the money in my bank account. I used about maybe $7,000 from it. The rest of the amount from my 50% of the overall cash to close was from my business credit. I liquidated business credit at 0% interest. I said it will be a lot faster for me to go and pay this, keep the cash on hand, and pay that off than me save an extra $7,000 to $9,000 that I could allocate towards this property's purchase. And I said, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. But they gave me a position where I said, all right, well, I have the cash on hand. This property is paying itself off. Now I'm gonna go do something else. Or why the fuck would I be in such a rush to use my own money? Because the second I use my own dollar, it dies there. When I use somebody else's dollar, my dollar that's in my pocket gets to go in 3 different places. Why would you not want your dollar in 3 different places? But in regards to the actual acquisition and the maintenance and also, placing tenants, you can't nickel and dime. You have to have the people do it. People that are better at you than what you do. They have to be better at you. When you talk to them, you should be learning shit. There is no reason that you should be in a position where you're the best at what you do in absolutely everything, because first of all, you're not. And second of all, you shouldn't think that you are. But third is, like I said, there are individuals that are better than you. You need to make sure that you're in a position where you allow them to do what the hell that they want to do, the way that they want to do it, as long as obviously the morals are right. Simply because if they're experienced, they're vetted, they're solid, they're doing it that way for a reason. So I hope this helps you out. Like I said, this is one of the biggest things that I always like to talk about in regards to the property acquisition. You have to think about absolutely everything. There's different strategies for different things. I bought multi-family, single family, and there's a million different things that go into the whole regard, but it does fall down under the core principles of scaling correctly, leveraging debt, being in a position where you think of your entrance and exit strategy, and also your allocation of time, money, and energy in all regards. And also thinking like, one, a lender, to think about, okay, if I was a lender, who would I lend money out to? The person that has this deal structured correctly, which looks like less of a risk to me. Or second, be in a position where I also think like an investor in regards to my return of time, money, energy. And third, thinking like a fucking tenant. The reason why I say thinking like a tenant is because if you buy something that is in a position where, for example, it's $250,000, maybe it's not a brand new remodel, it's not really upkept, and you're in a position where there's somebody in there that's maybe paying a below market rent, and you want to buy it and then raise the rent right away, they're gonna be like, why the fuck would I raise the rent if one, this property is not well maintained, two, the prior landlord didn't give a really fuck about me, so I'm gonna think the same way of the next landlord that's coming in, thinking that, you know what, this person maybe just sold it and they didn't want to do any work to it, so this next person's to be the exact same, but obviously request more rent. Then you have to be in a perspective where like, okay, well, does this individual have a month-to-month? Do they have a long-year lease? If they have a long-year lease, you obviously can increase it. If they have a month-to-month lease, how vicious is the increase? If you're not doing a complete remodel, but you want someone to go from fucking $1,000 a month to $1,500 a month, what the fuck work are you doing that's justifying that return? And alongside that, that property may not even make sense to do that return for, because you're only pocketing an extra $1,500 a month when you could have bought something that had someone at market rent that was $300,000 that didn't require any work, and now you go and occupy the other unit with another tenant. But you're in a position where, one, you don't have to create a bad relationship raising the rent right immediately. Imagine someone went, shook your hand, said, hey, nice to meet you, but your rent's going to increase by 50%. You'll be like, what the fuck? And two, you don't have to allocate time and energy to doing the repairs. And three, you could just focus on placing another tenant in the other unit if it's multifamily, but making sure that you're buying something that has separate meters, because when you share utilities, it's a lot harder to orchestrate the deal. It is a lot harder to deal with tenants. But like I said, things that people don't talk about. If you have any questions about anything I said, leave a comment below. But catch you on the flip. Bunch of game. I'm going to continue to stay helping y'all out.